One.
Do-over.
That's a do-over. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our 2021-2022 budget workshop. I am going to turn it over at this time to Mr. Brian Mitchum, our budget chairperson.
Good evening. I would like to take this opportunity to welcome everybody to our board budget workshop. And without further ado, I would like to ask Tina Meunier to provide us with the first draft of the 21-22 budget. Thank you, Tina.
Okay, you are welcome, and thank you all very much. This is our first look at the new year. I want to say thank you to our finance team. We have a big budget team in our office. It's me and Billy Saunders. So we have worked many hours to pull this together for you, and Billy has really done all the number crunching, and I just got to put it together on this pretty presentation. So let's jump right in. So let's go back a little bit to where we started in this current year, which was kind of different from our previous years. So for our current year, FY21, the state never did formally adopt a new budget. They're still working under the continuing resolution that was passed in June 2020. They never sent us any real figures to work on an amended budget, so we're still working off of that same budget that we did formally adopt a budget. With the continuing resolution last year, if y'all remember, the teacher step increase was frozen, so that was against the law for us to increase any teacher's salaries, so we froze it for everyone. So last year, to work on the FY21 budget, we based our budget on the state revenues at that time. At that same level, there was a slight increase in our local taxes at the beginning of the year due to growth in assessments. So one thing that the state was able to do to formally adopt was in March 11th, 2021, they approved the teacher step. So it's going to be retroactive to the beginning of the year. They will be sending us money. They haven't told us how much or when it's coming, but we are to pay it in a lump sum payment by June 15th. So as I said, the timing of the revenues and the amount is unknown to any of the school district at this time, but we do know that it's coming. However, I do want to note that it's not approved as a recurring state revenue for FY22 at this time, so it's not built into our numbers. So there is opportunity there for the I don't want to spoil the surprise later, but to close the gap of our revenues and expenditures, here's an opportunity for us to close that gap some if the state does send us some money, which we hope they will. So the House began their budget deliberations today at 1 o'clock. They were supposed to start, and then the Senate doesn't begin theirs until March 30th. Sometimes we have found that the Senate version, they give us a little extra money, so we'll wait and see how that goes. So information for DD2 specifically, the average daily membership at the 45th day for FY21 was at 24,270. That was a reduction of about 1,000 students as compared to our 135th day in FY20. So unfortunately, we knew this was coming. We have a loss of our EFA revenues of about $3.6 million because those students didn't come to school. Our weighted average daily membership also dropped to 32,556. However, we have built into the FY22 budget that we are anticipating all of those students to come back and possibly a few more students because of the additional growth from construction that's going crazy in Summerville right now. So that's a very volatile number right there, but we're really hoping that we can get them back. We've been talking internally about ways to reach out to those students who may be homeschooled or went to the virtual with the state, so we can bring them back. One of the things that has been a big talking point over the past few years for us is the base student cost. So we encourage anyone who has any legislators' ears to please encourage them to fully fund the base student cost. It has not been done since 1998. Since 2007, Dorchester 2 has lost over $200,000 in state funds. Now, it's a state law that they should be funding us at their base student cost amount, which would be $3,164, but they don't fund that. So our anticipated amount next year between the $3,164, which they are anticipating to go up to $2,500, it's still a $17 million difference in what we could have for next year. We wouldn't have any problems if we had that 17 million. I'm sure Mr. Pye would agree with that. Another area over the past couple of years that we've really been focusing on at District 2 is our Act 388 impact. We know that we've lost a few dollars to this as well. But the South Carolina Revenue and Fiscal Affairs Office each year allows us to increase, under Act 388, our millage. They go by the CPI and the population factor for our area. So we won't know the FY22 figures for that. It's typically reported in May, which will be way into our budget season by then. But we are also allowed to go to our look-back millage. So look-back is unused millage that we have not increased over the years. So we are allowed to go back for 3 years. And right now we have 15.11 mils in our look-back, which equals 4.6 billion. That could close our gap right there, Mr. Pye. The value of our mill right now in Dorchester 2 is $306,000 for operating, and the debt is twice that because we're able to use the assessed value for residential and not residential. So the debt millage is $615,000 per mill. Another big talking point that the board helped to address this year, thank you very much for doing this, is the amount that's held in our general fund balance. So at the end of June 30th, 2020, we had $32 million in our fund balance. GFOA recommends that we keep 16.7%. Right now we're at 14.8%. So the 16.7 equals 2 months, which would help us in the case of hurricanes, or as we saw with this natural pandemic, or unnatural pandemic, I should say, where we needed some revenues or we needed cash flow so that we could purchase the PPE and to go ahead and use some of that money for safety precautions before the state was able to send us some money. So we do have a board policy that says we should have it between 8 to 15%. And right now we are limited locally to 15%, which is what y'all addressed to the legislators. It would be really nice if we could get above that 15%. So right now we are able to have 1.1 3/4 months of operations for our fund balance if we were to get zero money from today, and we would be able to make payroll for 1 3/4 months in all of our other expenditures. Senator Bennett did introduce a proviso that waived the 15% cap, and I think that he was talking to y'all about that. So that was in place for fiscal year 20. And so since the state is under a continuing resolution for fiscal year 21, that should be waived for this current year as well, which will be helpful for us. However, it's not permanent. So I'd still like to see us move forward with that if we can do anything else to get that erased, since only us and Dorchester 4 are the only ones in the whole state with that cap. The next several slides provide some detail on items that we've purchased and items that we plan to purchase in relation to the state and federal monies that we've received for COVID. So the first pot of money that we received was the Coronavirus Relief Fund from the state. We were allocated $2.49 million. So we were able to purchase some items for remote learning and PPE and cleaning safety measures, so we could go ahead and work on that so we could get the staff back safely and work for the children to have remote learning. So I'm not going to go through all of these details, but I just wanted to point out we were able to purchase 50,000 adult and student disposable masks, 15,000 surgical masks. I mean, these are high numbers of items that we were able to get. We got 200 hand sanitizing stations, 363 cases of hand sanitizers, 2,100 gallons of hand sanitizer. We were just able to purchase a lot of PPE. Also, we were using the Coronavirus Relief Fund to purchase items for remote learning. We purchased 1,600 webcams for the teachers to be able to utilize on their laptops. We got Bluetooth speakerphones so that the sound could be heard better. We purchased second grade Dell devices. We purchased admin program for our virtual academy. We were just able to utilize this money in very effective rates. We also received federal funding through the CARES Act. Our allocation was $3.5 million. So this was to provide economic relief, additional economic relief for continued safety measures and to continue to employ personnel and for additional student learning. So we purchased more plexiglass above what the state allocated to us. We purchased sneeze guards, like as you can see in front of all of your, all of your areas there. We were able to pay for the student nutrition increased costs as students were out on hybrid and work and learning virtually. They were still able to come and get meals. Then there were increased costs with that, with packaging, so we were able to cover some of those costs. We also were able to purchase devices for the younger grades. The board initiative was to purchase devices down to third grade, but as we used some of that coronavirus money and also this CARES money, we were able to buy devices for all students, all the way down to kindergarten. Then we were able to get another pot of money, the Sr2 Funds. This is additional federal funding, and we were allocated $18 million. We are still currently working on our spending plan for that, but the big push for this is summer remediation programs. Also air quality and building repairs to promote safety. Mr. Pye will probably talk to you a little bit later in his State of the District about the extensive summer programs that we're going to be offering this summer to help with learning loss. We'd also like to hire additional teachers to reduce class sizes for the fall. Also ionization units as part of the air quality. And we'd also like to utilize the unrestricted rate that's allowable for indirect costs to be transferred to the general fund to cover the cost the general fund is paying for the use of these funds. So this is something new that the feds are allowing us to use the unrestricted rate, which is more than what the restricted rate for federal funds usually is. There's also word that there's going to be an additional federal funding coming from the latest stimulus package, but we have not heard what dollars or what the criteria would be for that. But we imagine it's for more, possibly more summer learning or more intense learning and additional PPE. We don't know when this is going to go away, so we'll just have to keep utilizing our funds to keep everyone safe. Now, instead of a lot of words and numbers, first we'll go for some pictures. So our general fund budget for FY22 for revenues, as you can see over the past few years, we've noted that the state revenues make up so much of our budget, and that's why it's really important for us to get those numbers from the state. We only received those numbers on last Thursday afternoon. So our state revenues are 74.5% of our entire budget. So if you start in the gold area or the orange area of 32%, that's our EFA funding, and move around to the left, then we have restricted state Lieu and taxes, and transfer from other funds. That's 74.5%. The other amounts that we get are local taxes. We have a little bit of, federal money, which doesn't even equal to 1% on here. So again, our budget is really reliant on state revenues. Expenditures for FY22. By function, we like to break this out and show that most of all of our expenditures are for instruction, instructional support, and school management. Those are the three areas those are the categories that directly affect students and touch the students and work with them as they are learning. So that is 78.5%. The state criteria, I'm not sure, did Mr. Pye, we were talking about that this morning, is it 65%? So we are well above that at 78%. This slide just shows our expenditures by object group, which shows 87%. I think Ms. Hughes, you were talking about this earlier in the year, that we don't have a whole lot of wiggle room in our budget. 87% goes for salaries and benefits of our staff. All other percentages are 13%. About 3.3% is our property insurance and utilities. So we don't have a lot of discretionary monies to be able to use to cut items, or we don't have additional programs that are easily cut. So now for some numbers for our revenue changes for Dorchester 2. This is based on revenue projections from the House Ways and Means that we just got, as I said, last Thursday. And we also got our projections from the county auditor. So the first line shows those estimates of an increase of 1.7 million for assessments, growth in assessments. That'll be helpful. Our state revenue in lieu of taxes. Now this is from last year and this year is $1.5 million. The EFA, this is $320,000 that also is taking into account that all of our students are coming back. We really have to work on our students coming back. We are having a cut in one area so far that we see of the state fringe benefits to employers of a negative $710,000. The small teacher salary increase that we know of that they are sending to us is $606,000. And then we have a little bit of growth in $847,000 in other state and local revenues. Again, as I said earlier, the teacher step funding is not included because they haven't projected that to us at this time. So our total additional state and local revenues at this time from FY21 to FY22 is an increase of $4.3 million. So our expenditure increases. The teacher salary increase that they have projected for FY21 and FY22 to include our current fringe is $5.7 million. There is also 1% retirement increase that was frozen in this current year and is now in place for next year. All employees, that will cost us $1.3 million. So the total mandated expenditures right now are $7 million. We also, as we had said, we have a step increase for all of our other employees to include fringe is $2.5 million. We don't like to give just for the teachers. Our whole staff, our whole family should get an increase when the teachers do, has been our philosophy. We also had a net decrease in other expenditures. Basically, it was transfers to other programs that we no longer need to do, mainly in the food service area. So that will provide us a little bit of a decrease in our expenditures of $500,000. So the total of all of those increases is $9 million. Unfortunately, as we saw on the last slide, our revenue increases were only $4.3 million, so it leaves us with a deficit of $4.7 at this time. First look. So here are all of your revenues on this. Is kind of a busy slide. It's got a lot of numbers on it. I'll send this to you in your board packet so you can study it over the weekend and ask me some other questions. We have some additional columns on here that we haven't presented in the past, just because this has been such an unusual year. Our projected revenues for this current year, you'll see our current budget in the first column is $216,784,405, and that was the officially adopted budget. So our projected revenues of $213,334, that would have been what we if we had amended our budget, we would have been able to come back to y'all to show that the decrease is mainly in the EFA monies. So we have a reduction in our revenues, but as you'll see on the next slide, we had a reduction in our expenditures. So the next column shows that if we were to have included a step increase earlier in the year, this is what our adjusted budget in quotes means. So then our proposed budget for FY22 will increase to $221,140,952. And again, those are all the differences that we had discussed on the last slide of $4.3 million. Again, I just want to point out that we did build in on the EFA, because it shows a current budget of $70 million, went down to 66 of what we actually received. But we are budgeting for all those students to come back. So if you know of any students who weren't here this year, ask them to come back. So on our expenditure categories, we broke this down into our categories that you usually see on your board report between instruction, instructional support, school management, etc. So our current budget again was $216,784,405, which our expenditures from our revenues was $0. We had a balanced budget. So our projected expenditures from our projected revenues just so far this year of what we know, we anticipate that we will come out with $995,000 to the good. Our adjusted budget column includes the step increases that they had mandated for us. And then our proposed budget is $225,932,045, which again, as we had said, shows a difference of revenues to expenditures of $4.7 million. We have an opportunity, though, for that gap. Hopefully, we'll get some more state revenues. Those are just the projections that were given to us from the House Ways and Means Committee that we received on Thursday. We're hoping that the step increase will show up, and that will help us out. That will help us out significantly, but not 4.7 million, as Mr. Pye reminded me. So items that are currently not included in our budget, which probably could be, should be, but it would make our number higher. But items that are not included, the first one is our possible increase in our employer health costs. That could be right under 1% at 0.8%. The second item is guidance counselors at the elementary level were reduced from the staff back in the last budget crunch that we had in 2009, 2010, and they were never rehired. So we should have been asking for them every year for those elementary guidance counselors to come back on, especially right now with all the mental health issues, and we just need those guidance counselors back. Another item that we wanted to make sure that everyone is aware of is that with the budget constraints at the City of North Charleston, they were not able to provide us with a uniformed officer in all 4 of our elementary schools in the North Charleston area. They were able to provide one that covered all 4 of those elementary schools. We do have internal security at all of those schools. It's just not uniform security with an outside agency. So if we were to get 3 additional officers, they would have to come from Dorchester County, and we haven't approached them about that, but that will be an additional cost to us as well. That's not included here. The next item that's not included is the elimination of the retiree reduction. Anyone who has retired with the district who comes back to work has a 10% reduction of their pay, and we have been trying to get this eliminated for years and years and years. Back in our last budget crunch of 2009, 2010, it went down to 30%, or went up to 30%, I should say. So we have come back down, and we're now at 10%. We've had some retirees leave, so that amount is not as high as it used to be. But again, that's a number that's not reflected in here if we wanted to eliminate that. Another area that has suffered is our schools. Our per pupil allocations that the district usually gives to the schools used to be, again, 2009-10 when we did budget cuts, it used to be $76.50. It's now $52.50. So the only way that the schools get additional funds is if they have growth in their schools. And then the last item shown is we basically have not adjusted any departmental budgets. If there's some inflationary factors for contracts, such as the SRO agreement with the county, or if our leases for our copiers increase, we have to increase it for that small amount, but we have not seen significant increases at all for any of our departmental budgets. So they haven't been keeping up with inflation, so basically their budgets have shrunk. So some major initiatives of DD2 right now. I meant to put this one on here and I forgot. The completion of the district office. That's our final referendum project. So that is the project that we will complete soon. So maybe that's why I didn't capture that. These other ones are a little further out. Construction of the new middle school. We'll be using impact fees and our GO bond debt to complete that. That's starting as soon as possible. It should be coming out of the ground soon. And then another big push that another major initiative would be lowering class sizes to allow for more social distancing. So we would like to decrease the number of students in the classes, and we are planning to use Sr2 funds for that out of that $18 million pot that they have allocated to us. So the last item that I have is just to show you our remaining budget meetings. Well, this is our very first one. So then we have a public input meeting on April 21st. Hopefully we will get some additional numbers from the state. The Senate will have their final printed version on April 20th. So that'll be the day before we meet again. So maybe we'll get some different numbers. Then we'll have a public hearing. And then we go to the county for a budget presentation. So the county is asking for us to have a board-approved budget to them by April 12th of this year. That's pretty much impossible. We won't have our final numbers from the state before then. But we can give them our draft budget, and we can show them what we've been working on, as well as our 5-year plan, that we're using these projected numbers to move forward with the 5-year plan. And we can definitely present that to y'all at the next meeting that we have, which will be the day that they're asking for it, for our approved board budget. I'm just not sure how we can do that. So those are all of my slides. That was a lot. But are there any questions, or what kind of questions? I know there are plenty.
If I can, this money for the teacher step increase that was frozen, are you saying, I'm not sure if I understand, that is not ongoing, it is just for this year?
So remember when you and I spoke, I did a little additional research on that, and we will get some money this current year, but as you and I said, we did not get in our projections for next year that is recurring.
So they would have to vote on that to be a permanent step increase, and that's what we need to push all of us.
Because they said it's a permanent increase, they just didn't promise us the money for next year.
Well, then, put your money where your mouth is. Sorry. So that's what we need to keep pushing then?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
That would be helpful.
So just to follow up with that, but it's built into our budget. It's just that
The 2% increase for the staff has been included as an expenditure.
Right.
But not the
just not
revenue
as
side of it.
side.
Yes, ma'am.
Right, so that's part of that.
That's part of our
deficit.
difference.
That's
Yes,
right.
ma'am.
But that's what you're saying, but obviously just a small part.
Right. Thanks. I just wanted to clear.
I know, I was worried when you and I spoke about that, so I had to dig down deeper. I was like, oh, no. They did not include that in our projections for next year.
Ms. Meunier, I have
Yes.
a question from Mr. Farnsworth, who is not able to be here yet. But he said that, does the budget, transportation increase look at pay raises for drivers? If not, that is one area I think we need to look at. That was both a question and a statement.
We have not built in any salary increases for anyone at this time, except for that 2% step. We haven't increased above that. We're just talking about that this morning, about the transportation drivers.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Evan, you good?
But are you at all working or able to look into that and see if there's a possibility? Because we're getting a lot of feedback from transportation people, folks, and the morale seems to be lower than usual, and it is everywhere. You know, we're trying to build it back up, but
Right.
is there any?
Well, unfortunately,
chance?
Mr. Pine, we're talking about that this morning, about how our salary study that we had done maybe 5 years ago, we've been trying to hit small areas as we can, but it's almost obsolete now. We're so far behind in all of our areas now.
She's gone over the essentials that we are mandated and have to do to keep up, and we're still at 4-point-something million deficit. All these things we want it for everybody, but that's millions more on top of the 4.6. I just want you to know we're in a hole tonight about where we're getting the $4 million. Let's put that on the table before anything else can be added. And you see the things we mentioned that we're looking at. Classroom sizes, but see, that's recurring money. We cannot go out and buy 50 teachers that we can't support the next year. But if we could get it out of the extra funds, we're allowed out of this new pot of money, then through attrition, we probably can put ourselves back every year until there is new funding. But it would give us a chance, because if we have to do any social distancing next year, we're going to have to do better than the numbers that we have. I know everybody's so excited about the 3 feet now that they've come out with. Well, that's where we are on a good day in our high schools and middle schools. We were never at 6 feet. Elementary, some classes were at 6, most of them are at 3. So that's where we are, is where they're now recommending. It's not that we get to move down and do away with things. We're just getting to what we have, the most we can do. We're doing the very best that I know to do. The only way around it is to hire more teachers, if we can find them, in lower class sizes. And that is what we've told our principals. They're out searching now to hire the people, and hopefully we'll get a sizable amount of ESSER funds that will allow us to pay for those salaries. So that's important. Now, whether that money can be used for raises for anybody, I'm not sure. But if we can tie anything to COVID, it might be like a one-time thing, but how do you do, $15 an hour? But that is the minimum wage requirement, is what they're looking at, is $15. Well, we're at 14. All of our neighbors are $15.60, $15.50, $16. And so we really do need to add $1 there if we're going to be able to get children back and forth to school. I mean, it's just that. But morale is a lot about the salary. But just as it is with teachers and every group we have, no one is getting what they feel they should get. And the state is just not supplying those funds, and they're making all that local, and we really don't have any local monies coming in. As you can see, it's so limited. So we've got to find more revenue sources if we're going to be able to keep up with what we already have, let alone trying to reduce the class sizes and all the other things we want to do, like the retirees. Every year we go through that. It was 30%, 2010, we had it down to 5. Back 6, when y'all came on the board 6 years ago, and we have not been able to touch that 10% in 6 or 7, 8 years. And so it's down, with the numbers of people are probably, I know there are like 18 certified people on the list, but there's some non-certified, but that list has gone from well over $1 million to maybe less than $500,000, 350,000. But 350,000 sounds so low, but that's the exact cost of a $1 raise for all bus drivers. Exact cost. So if you don't have any money and you can come up with 350,000, we have to make decisions. Which one will it be? And that's what we've dealt with every single year with this. It's just, we're hoping we will not be in a position at any time to have to cut back anything that we have, because, like we said, we never got our guidance counselors back. We're short a lot of personnel in various different places from other school districts our size. And of course, the class sizes got down pretty good a couple of years ago, but we've edged back on up, and that's why we were one of the last districts face-to-face, because we couldn't do it, because we could not social distance. And we want the public to not forget that. We're not relaxing, because we still have large classes in there. We're doing everything known to man to hopefully reduce the opportunities for the disease to spread. We can't guarantee that, but we're doing lots of things. And of course, that's met with opposition too, that it's so cruel to have children wearing masks in school. Well, if you're going to come to school, you got to wear masks. We just can't put you through that ordeal of doing that, or our employees. So those are just tough decisions, but one thing leads to another. If you do this, you have to do this, and there are going to be some trade-offs. So hopefully in the next month or two in our next workshops, having met with the principals and the principals with their faculties, we can get our wish list together. And in our case in Dorchester too, it won't be a wish list, it'll be a want-need list. But then we'll bring it to you, and you'll see that it's just way out there in the millions. I don't want to sound negative, but it is. It's so disheartening when there's no new money, and no one seems to recognize that. And we're living off stimulus money, which is not real money in the end of the day. And so you got to be
It's not
careful how you
recurring.
spend
It
that.
doesn't
It's not
last
recurring,
forever.
and you have all these expenditures, we'd be broke, we wouldn't be able to have a fund balance big enough to cover it. So those are all the issues, but we've been working on that. But we certainly are hearing all these concerns, and I'm sure as we open up to the more of a public, we will get more requests, and they're all genuine. I haven't had anything since. I will bring this up, and I probably shouldn't, but I had a request from some of the high school administration about 10 years ago to dome in the stadium. So that was the last time I had an idea that I just about had to be hospitalized over. I think domed over what? I don't think so. We're lucky to have a roof on the building, let alone a dome on the stadium. So, but I just thought I'd mention that to tell you, we do get every kind of request.
We don't have enough capital money for that either.
No, we don't have, and ESSER's not going to pay for that.
Mr. Pye, we are hearing from a lot of our transportation department. So, I mean, I would like to make sure that we do put them on that wish list, just so that we know that they're there and we don't lose track of that, because they are very important, and we are way behind with them on salaries compared to our neighboring districts. So, I'd just like to make sure that we put that on the wish list so that we can check it out.
Tonight, but this is just an overview, but on our list that we're
Right.
in the office there.
I'll add that to the board.
Okay, does anyone have any other questions or comments? Ms.
I
Winberg?
had a question. So I know you said the stimulus money is not going to be reoccurring, and you mentioned it
Right.
briefly, but do we have any idea how much money they
I
have?
have not heard anything about this last wave of money, the 1.9 trillion that Biden just
We-
signed.
so-
I haven't heard anything as far as what DD2. Have you heard anything, Billy? No. So,
We keep hearing it more than last time. That's encouraging.
Right. Usually, and do you expect, I don't know if you know, if it will be, there will be certain things we have to spend it on?
I'm sure there'll be additional criteria, just like with this new pot of money. They were going towards air quality, and they really wanted us to make sure that our buildings were safe, and
They want to do whatever it takes to be face-to-face.
Right.
Which is learning loss. make up
Yes.
the learning loss situation, reduce class sizes, what's the third thing? All the,
There you go. The
protocols
ventilation
that put
and
those
the-
in place. In other words, they want us to do, exhaust every single thing. The ventilation is big, and that's big for us, because as we talk to schools, anything replacing the older units start at $2 million per school. And I know we get some money, we won't get that to do all the schools, but maybe we get enough to do the ones, 8 or 10 that's most pressing as we start moving down that line. So we're just excited to see that it's there, and hopefully there's something. And that's not, we won't have to have that as recurring money, so those
Right.
kinds of things could maybe help us that would free up other monies that we could put to the
Do we know
recurring things.
about what percentage we have left from what we've received already from CARES Act and those other?
So the COVID relief funds, we have spent all of that. The CARES monies, we maybe have 5% left, and then we just got this new $18 million that we're submitting the plan for. Again, Mr. Pye and all of the directors are coming up with the summer programs, and so that will be one of our main items that will be included in that plan that will submit to the state. And as I said, just concerning the local taxes, we are able to use our look-back millage. I know it's not a popular item to discuss local property taxes, but under the Act 388, we are allowed to go back 3 years, and we have 15 mills still on the table. That could help.
So if we did that, that would increase the millage for the businesses.
Yes.
That's with how that works, not residential.
On
That's
non-residential,
Right,
yes.
on non-residential.
If there was something that the state could do about that Act 388, I doubt it will ever be repealed, but if they could adjust it or do something that would not penalize the bedroom communities like us so drastically, that would just be helpful. That's a problem for later. It won't help us immediately in
Right.
our current situation, but for the future perhaps.
Okay, anyone else? No? Okay. Well,
All right,
thank
until
you
next
very
time.
much, Mr. Mitchell.
Or please
something
send
you
us
wanna
any
add?
questions, if you have any follow-up, just please let us know.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Meunier. Appreciate it. Look
thank
forward
you.
to the next report.
Hopefully it'll be we'll have some additional revenues, and it'll look better.
That'd be nice. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, that's it for the budget presentation. Back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchum. I appreciate it. And Tina, we appreciate all the hard work that you and your team has done, as always, and done a great job. So, and we'll look forward to our next meeting and hopefully have some better numbers next time. But anyway, I guess now we'll call this budget workshop, close this budget workshop, and we will take a little bit of a break, and then we'll be back at 6 o'clock for our board meeting.